She mistook a millionaire for a maintenance worker, but the truth was even more unbelievable. Hello, everyone. Before we begin, if these stories bring you a little peace, a quiet tear, or a smile that stays until midnight, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. It's free and only takes a second of your time, but it helps this little channel grow so we can keep sharing moments that remind us what love is truly about. And tell us where you're watching from. Your words make this world feel a little warmer, a little kinder. Thank you for being here. Sometimes a wrong turn doesn't ruin your day, it rewrites it. Let us return to our main character. At 8:30 sharp, Vance Tower was already awake, an orchestra of glass, steel, and caffeine. The lobby gleamed like a mirror of the city outside, all silver light and fast footsteps. People hurried with purpose. Machines hummed. Everything in order. Everything in control. Until one elevator decided to stop believing in gravity. Claire Monroe, operations manager, guardian of order, took the call mid-stride. Elevator 52, again. She sighed like someone who loved her job just slightly less than she feared chaos. By the time she reached the 52nd floor, a crowd had formed. Executives checking watches, assistants whispering. A man in a gray work shirt was crouched by the control panel, sleeves rolled, a small toolbox open beside him. No ID badge, no name tag, just calm hands moving over wires with the focus of someone who actually knew what he was doing. Claire crossed her arms. "You're not on my roster." He looked up, eyes amused. "Would it help if I said I'm new?" "It might help more if you said you're qualified." By the time she reached the 52nd floor, a crowd had formed. Executives checking watches, assistants whispering. A man in a gray work shirt was crouched by the control panel, sleeves rolled, a small toolbox open beside him. "It might help more if you said you're qualified." Before she could reply, the panel sparked. He flinched slightly, muttered something about voltage, and reached again. Without hesitation, she knelt beside him, holding the panel open with one hand, the flashlight with the other. "You're supposed to stand 10 feet back." She smiled. "You fix faster if I watch?" "Probably worse," he said, grinning. "But I'll try not to short the whole building." "You're supposed to stand 10 feet back." A low hum returned as the elevator lights blinked to life. The doors opened with a mechanical sigh, and the bystanders scattered, already forgetting the man who had saved their morning schedule. Claire, however, stayed crouched beside him. The glow of the panel washed over their faces, silver and soft. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "Better now." When he reached for his wrench, she noticed the engraving times V. T. 2012. Asterisk. The year the tower was built. It looked too personal to be company-issued. "Old tool," she said. "Old habit," he replied. "I like keeping what's worked before." His voice was steady, deep, the kind of tone that carried warmth even through metal. Something about it made her pause, like déjà vu she couldn't name. "Maintenance crew usually checks in at the front desk," she said. "I wasn't scheduled," he replied. "Just passing through." "Thought I'd help." "Passing through?" He smiled faintly. "Guess I'm still figuring out where I belong." For a moment they just stood there, the hum of the machine filling the silence. Outside the window, the Chicago skyline shimmered like 1,000 reflections waiting to be understood. Claire brushed dust from her skirt. "Well, thanks for saving the morning." "Any time," he said, lifting the worn toolbox. "You keep things running. I just fix what stops." The elevator pinged again, a small reminder that the world had resumed its rhythm. He stepped back, ready to leave. "Wait, what's your name?" she asked. He turned slightly. "Daniel." "Nice work, Daniel." He gave a polite nod, almost formal. "You make a good teammate, Miss Monroe." Then he was gone, swallowed by the corridor, his reflection dissolving into the mirrored walls. She lingered a moment longer, listening to the faint hum of the cables. Her radio crackled. "Elevator 50? 2 back online?" "Yes," she said, smiling without meaning to. "And let maintenance know whoever that new guy is, he's good." Back in her office, she caught her reflection in the window, the skyline stretching forever, the glass glinting like water. For the first time in months, the city didn't look cold. It looked alive. On the desk beside her, the service report still blinked. She typed one short line. Asterisk. Technician efficient, polite, calm under pressure. Asterisk. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, Asterisk. Recommend permanent placement. Asterisk. She hit save. The elevator bell chimed in the distance. She didn't know it yet, but the man she'd just written about didn't just fix things. She thought she was helping a worker. He thought it was the kindest misunderstanding he'd ever had. And somewhere in the hum of steel and heartbeat, something new began to rise. The hum of the elevator faded into the night. Claire Monroe wrote it down to her floor, the one place in the tower that didn't belong to anyone else. Her apartment on the 10th floor was spotless. Everything had a place. Nothing dared to wander. The couch faced the window, the books were aligned by height, and even the air smelled like routine. She kicked off her heels, walked to the counter, and started the machine that knew her rhythm better than most people did. The coffee poured dark and patient. She took the first sip, eyes fixed on the skyline outside. The city looked perfect from this distance, like something she could still control. On the fridge, a small card hung crookedly. Structural Engineer, Class of 2016. The title used to mean something. She had built bridges, once literal ones, until the firm downsized and the men stayed while she didn't. She still remembered her boss's line. "You're too detail-oriented for field work. Try management." He meant it as advice. It landed like exile. So she learned to manage, to predict, to prevent, to make sure nothing broke again. Each morning was a quiet contract between her and the building. She would keep it standing. It would keep her from falling apart. She rinsed her cup, lined it exactly where it belonged, and whispered the same words she said every dawn. Keep things working. It was less a motto than a prayer. But tonight, her reflection in the glass didn't look convinced. The lights from the other towers flickered in the distance, tiny constellations of lives still moving. Hers stayed still. She thought about the man in the elevator, Daniel, with the calm voice and the old wrench, the way he'd smiled when the doors opened. Not grateful, just seen. Claire shook her head, half smiling at herself. "Don't romanticize the maintenance guy," she murmured. "You just need sleep." Still, when she turned off the light, her mind kept replaying that one spark, the one that fixed more than the elevator. Outside, the tower gleamed, cold and certain. Inside, one woman made sure it stayed that way, even when she no longer knew if she wanted to. Tomorrow she'd wake up, pour her coffee, and whisper the same words again. Keep things working. Daniel Vance never had to come back for money. He had plenty of that: patents, properties, a name that still opened doors even when he stopped walking through them. But success had become noise. And somewhere along the way, he realized he missed the quiet hum of creation, the pulse of something he built with his own hands. Vance Tower was his first masterpiece. He designed it at 31, young enough to believe that glass could reflect goodness, not greed. He called it Asterisk, a building that breathes. Asterisk investors laughed, then cashed in. Within 3 years, the project made him a millionaire. Within 5, it made him restless. The scandal that followed wasn't his ruin, it was his release. He'd exposed a partner's misuse of funds meant for safety audits, and the board had spun it as recklessness. He didn't fight the press. He just left, took the settlements, the patents, the silence. He told himself he was free. Yet some nights, when city lights hit his penthouse windows, he'd catch his own reflection and wonder why freedom looked so much like distance. Now, years later, Vance Tower was calling him back. A fault in the upper systems, persistent, expensive, and strangely poetic. He could have sent a team, but something in him wanted to stand inside that glass again, to hear the sound of what he'd made breathing without him. So he came quietly. No press, no assistance, no title. Just Daniel, in a gray shirt, walking through the lobby that still smelled faintly of marble dust and ambition. He brushed his fingers along the cold railing, remembering the day it was installed. Asterisk. Build for people. Asterisk, he used to tell his team. Asterisk. Not for pride. Asterisk. That was before he realized how rare that actually was. When the elevator jammed, instinct took over. He went to help, not as the owner, but as the architect who still cared. And then she appeared, Claire Monroe, calm, sharp, kind without effort. Her presence was like opening a forgotten window. She didn't see a millionaire. She saw a man doing something useful. She steadied the panel, held the light, spoke to him like an equal. He hadn't felt that simple kind of respect in years. After she left, he stayed a while, listening to the hum of the elevator he'd designed, smiling at the irony. He built towers for the sky, but she made him look down and see people again. 2 days later, the sky over Chicago was the color of steam and sunlight. Claire Monroe stood in line at the lobby cafe of Vance Tower, her morning coffee ritual already timed to the second. But today, the rhythm broke again. The espresso machine hissed, sputtered, and gave up with a groan. The young barista sighed, glancing helplessly toward the counter. Then, from the corner of her eye, Claire saw a familiar shape, a man in a gray shirt, sleeves rolled, wiping down tables and examining the broken machine like it was a puzzle meant only for him. It took her a moment to place him, then she smiled. "You again." Daniel looked up, the same calm warmth in his eyes. "You must have a thing for broken elevators and bad coffee. I manage both for a living." She tilted her head, watching as he tested a few buttons, then leaned in to check the filter. "Are you fixing that too?" "Trying to," he said, tapping the side of the machine gently. "Old habits. You really fix everything, don't you? Only the things people still care about." His tone was light, but something in it made her pause. "Doesn't seem like the most lucrative strategy." He shrugged. "Money's never been the problem. Time is." That answer struck her as odd. But before she could ask, the machine sputtered back to life. He stepped aside, half bowing. "There you go. Your city can keep functioning for one more morning." She laughed. "Then you've earned this." She waved at the barista. "1 cappuccino, and make it his. Consider it a maintenance bonus." Daniel raised a brow. "You're bribing me to stay employed?" "More like preventing another breakdown." The barista handed him a paper cup. The logo read Vance Cafe, the print slightly faded, with a faint line beneath. "Built to belong." He ran a thumb over the words, almost tenderly. "That's a nice thought. Corporate slogan," she said. "Though I suppose it sounds deeper when the coffee's decent." "Maybe not so corporate," he murmured. "Some places mean it." They moved to the window, seating unspoken agreement. Claire leaned on her elbow, coffee between her palms. "You really do this everywhere?" she asked. "Fixing things that aren't yours?" He smiled. "You could say everything I care about started out that way." She laughed softly. "That's the most philosophical thing I've heard before. 9 a.m. He studied her face for a moment. "You sound like someone who believes in rules." "I believe in order," she corrected. "Buildings need structure. People do, too. And when the structure cracks, then you fix it before it spreads." He nodded slowly, eyes narrowing in thought. "You'd have made a good architect." "I was one," she said quietly, "before someone decided I wasn't the right fit for the job I designed myself into." Daniel's gaze softened. "Then maybe they built the wrong kind of walls." She blinked, surprised by how easily he understood. "You talk like you've built a few yourself." He smiled faintly. "Too many." They sat in silence, the kind that wasn't awkward but honest. Two people in a glass lobby, surrounded by reflections of their own choices. She finished her drink and stood. "Well, Daniel, if you're taking requests, the stairwell light on 10's been flickering for weeks." He grinned. "I'll see what I can do." "Old habits," she teased. He lifted his coffee in salute. "Some are worth keeping." As she walked away, Daniel watched her reflection fade into the mirrored wall, the paper cup still warm in his hands. The faint words beneath the logo blurred with condensation. "Built to belong." He thought about how he had once written that phrase himself, years ago, when he believed buildings could bring people together. He'd almost forgotten why. Now, somehow, a woman who ran the place, as if it were hers, had reminded him. The elevator chimed nearby, echoing through the marble floor. She thought he was a man holding too many jobs. He thought she was the first person to see the worth in one. And above them, Vance Tower seemed to breathe again. The following Monday began with the quiet tension only corporate meetings could summon. Claire Monroe entered the glass conference room on the 52nd floor, the floor she'd kept running for years but had never been invited to sit in. She straightened the collar of her blazer, tablet in hand. The agenda read, "Maintenance Review and Structural Briefing with Ownership." That last word made her pause. Ownership? The tower hadn't had a personal visit from upper management in years. The regional director stood near the head of the table, smiling too broadly. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began. "Today's meeting is special. We're joined by someone who knows this building better than any of us. Please welcome Mr. Daniel Vance, founder of Vance Group." Claire's pen slipped from her fingers. The door opened. He walked in tall, composed, the same calm expression, but now framed by a light gray suit and a quiet confidence that didn't need introduction. The air seemed to shift around him. Conversations died mid-sentence. For a heartbeat, he looked directly at her. It wasn't smugness in his eyes, or apology, just recognition, warm and private. She froze under it, pulse racing, every moment from that elevator flashing back. He took the podium. "I'm not here to talk about profit margins," he said, "or expansion plans." His voice carried easily, smooth but grounded. "I came because this tower, the first I ever built, had a small fault recently. A signal that reminded me why we started building in the first place." He paused, eyes sweeping the room, landing on her again for just a breath. "A building isn't strong because of steel. It's strong when people care enough to keep it standing." Claire felt her throat tighten. He was talking to everyone, but the words felt directed at her alone, the woman who had held a flashlight while he repaired a switch, not knowing he was the man who designed the cables she guarded every day. Around her, the executives nodded politely, taking notes, missing the heartbeat beneath the speech. He continued, "This tower was designed to reflect the city's light, not its distance. I forgot that for a while. But lately, someone reminded me that the small things, an open door, a working light, are what make a place worth keeping." Her chest warmed with something equal parts, embarrassment and admiration. She lowered her eyes, unsure if she should be angry for not knowing, or grateful that she hadn't treated him differently. When the applause began, she didn't move. He stepped down, exchanged a few handshakes, and walked toward her. She was still seated, pretending to review notes that no longer mattered. His shadow reached her before his words did. "Claire," he said quietly, "you run this place better than I ever did." She looked up, half smiling, half flustered. "That's not fair. You built it." He nodded almost wistfully. "Maybe, but you kept it alive." Before she could reply, he turned away to greet the next group of executives. The meeting dissolved into chatter, but Claire stayed seated, tracing her finger along the edge of the table to steady herself. Through the glass wall, she watched him speak confident, composed, the opposite of the man she thought she'd bought coffee for. And yet, somehow, the same. The city stretched behind him in mirrored blues and silver light. In the reflection, their eyes met once more. He smiled, small and knowing. She looked away first. She thought she was helping a man fix a switch. He had just rebuilt her idea of worth. And for the first time in a long while, the structure inside her didn't feel so rigid anymore. For 3 days after the meeting, Claire kept her head down. The tower ran smoothly, too smoothly. Every system logged clean. Every schedule stayed on time. Yet she felt the weight of every floor pressing above her, as if the glass itself remembered her mistake. She avoided the upper levels, choosing the service stairs instead of the executive elevator. When she passed the cafe, she caught herself looking for him, then scolding herself for it. A maintenance report came across her desk that morning. 52nd floor light sensor calibration complete. She read the signature at the bottom, D. Vance. It was written in neat, slanted strokes. She closed the file quickly, her pulse unreasonably loud in the quiet office. She told herself it was simple. He was her boss. She had spoken too freely. And now, she would forget it, move on, keep things working. But the thought wouldn't leave her. Not his name, not the way he'd said those words about caring enough to keep something standing. Late that evening, she stayed behind to check reports. The floor was empty except for the hum of the cleaning bots and the low whir of the lights. When she turned, she found him standing at the doorway, no suit, just a dark sweater, sleeves rolled. "Mr. Vance," she said, trying to sound formal. "Daniel," he corrected gently. "May I?" She nodded, her throat dry. He stepped closer, stopping a comfortable distance away. "I owe you something," he said. "A proper thank you." "There's no need." Her voice came out too fast. "You don't have to pretend that day didn't happen." "I'm not pretending." His tone was calm, almost tender. "You saw me as useful. That's the best thing anyone said to me in years." Her heart tightened. She wanted to look at him but couldn't. Maybe I should have seen more. Maybe you saw exactly what I needed you to. He smiled faintly, but she could sense the quiet ache beneath it. He wasn't proud of the deception, if it could even be called that. He had simply let her believe what he no longer dared to correct. The silence stretched. She felt the pulse in her wrist, the hum of the building through the floor. "I thought I crossed a line," she whispered. "You built this place. I just keep it running." "Isn't that the same thing?" he asked. She blinked, startled by how easily he erased the distance between them. "No," she said softly. "You create. I maintain." He shook his head. "Without you, it collapses." Oh, that truth landed harder than it should have. She drew a breath, steady but uneven. "Still, I can't undo how I spoke to you." He smiled again, no arrogance, just warmth. "Don't. That's the first real conversation I've had in months." Something fragile passed between them, half apology, half understanding. But she couldn't let it stay. "I should get back to work," she said, forcing a polite tone. He nodded slowly. "Then I'll stop interrupting." "Okay." When he left, the air seemed colder, the lights sharper. Claire sat for a long moment, staring at her reflection in the glass wall, the manager who had treated a millionaire like a worker, and a man who had treated her like an equal. She felt both foolish and grateful, both proud and unsure. In the quiet, she whispered to no one, "Keep things working." But even she could tell it wasn't the building she was talking about anymore. By the next week, something in the rhythm of Vance Tower changed. Memos carried his name again, Daniel Vance, founder. Not as a title, but as a presence. People noticed him walking the floors, not above them. He met with teams, asked quiet questions, took notes by hand. And when he wasn't speaking, he was listening the way builders do when they want to hear what the walls have to say. On Friday morning, an announcement went out from his office. Blueprint Voices, an internal initiative to share profit and recognition with the engineers, maintenance staff, and architects who keep our structures alive. It spread through the building like light after a long night. That evening, Claire received a call. "Can you come up to 52?" She hesitated, then stepped into the elevator that once trapped them both. The ride felt longer this time, heavier with unspoken things. The door opened to a dimly lit conference room. Daniel stood by the window, city lights burning behind him. On the table, a folder lay open, the words Blueprint Voices stamped across the cover. He looked up. "I want you to lead it." She blinked. "Me? You see details no one else does," he said. "You fix what others overlook. That's the kind of vision this needs." Her instinct was to refuse. "Daniel, I'm not an executive. I manage schedules and repair teams." "I'm not," he interrupted softly. "Exactly. You know how the building breathes. You know where it hurts." She looked down at the folder, tracing the blue ink with her fingertip. "Is this because you feel guilty about—" He shook his head. "No, it's because I feel hopeful again." Something in his tone disarmed her. She saw the sincerity there, not the charm of a man used to getting his way, but the humility of one who'd learned what mattered. "Claire," he said, keener now, "money builds structures, but care keeps them standing. You taught me that." For a moment she couldn't speak. Then she nodded. "I'll do it, not for the profit share, but because you believe in it," he finished, smiling. "That's why it'll work." The room felt warmer somehow, lit by the soft amber glow of the wall sconces and the reflection of the city shimmering in the glass. Papers spread between them like maps to something neither could name. As they worked through drafts and plans, the formality between them faded. They spoke not as superior and subordinate, but as two architects of the same heartbeat. She noticed he still carried that old silver wrench sometimes, keeping it near his notes. He noticed she still whispered small reminders under her breath when she focused her quiet ritual to keep the world from breaking. The night stretched longer, the city lights grew softer, and somewhere between revisions and laughter, between silence and shared glances, a connection began to take shape, something slow, steady, unplanned. It was in the way he waited before speaking, in the way she no longer corrected him for staying too late. Outside, the tower shimmered in gold and glass. Inside, two people worked under its glow, fixing what truly mattered. The weeks that followed blurred into motion plans, revisions, small victories stacked like blueprints across a shared desk. Claire and Daniel worked side by side, their conversations slipping between technical precision and quiet humor. They spent mornings reviewing cost sheets and evenings sketching diagrams on glass walls. He'd bring coffee, she'd bring order. Somewhere in between, laughter began to fill the pauses that used to feel like work. She teased him for the way he still preferred paper over screens. He teased her for counting every elevator stop like a heartbeat. The tower itself seemed to listen, humming differently when they passed. Sometimes he'd stay in her office long after the others left, both of them hunched over a half-finished report, sharing notes, half-smiles, and the kind of silence that asked for nothing more than presence. One Thursday evening, the rain started early, heavy, steady, washing the city in streaks of silver. A notice pinged on Claire's tablet. Roof leak, 47th floor ceiling. She sighed. Again? He looked up from his notes. Let's check it. By the time they reached the maintenance level, the storm had thickened, tapping rhythm against the glass like fingers on a drum. The overhead lights flickered, pale blue against the wet floor. They traced the dripping sound to a narrow panel above the corridor. Water slipped through a thin crack, scattering light across their faces. Funny, she said softly. This floor always leaks no matter who fixes it. He smiled. Maybe it wants us to keep coming back. She laughed, shaking her head. You make it sound like the building has a crush on us. Maybe it just knows a good team when it sees one. She rolled her eyes but smiled anyway. Together, they lifted the panel to inspect the wiring beneath. Her hand steadied the metal as his reached over to adjust the board. The air smelled like rain and steel. Their fingers brushed just a moment, brief as a spark, but neither pulled away. He glanced at her, that calm patience in his gaze softening into something warmer. She looked back. Steady. Unguarded. For a while, the only sound was rain. It fell through the gap like a rhythm meant just for them, slow, constant, alive. She exhaled, almost a whisper. It's strange. We fix so many things, but nothing ever stays perfect. He nodded. Maybe that's the point. If things never broke, we'd never have a reason to return. She smiled at that, the corners of her mouth soft and thoughtful. You really believe that? I do, he said. Some cracks don't mean failure. They just let the light in. She looked away, pretending to focus on the leak, but her pulse betrayed her. It wasn't the words, it was how he said them, low and certain, as if he wasn't talking about the ceiling at all. They worked quietly after that, passing tools, sharing glances. Every small movement seemed to echo louder in the narrow corridor. When they finally sealed the gap, the dripping stopped, but neither of them spoke. The rain outside softened, sliding down the windows in shimmering lines. Claire leaned against the wall, her hands dusty, her heart strangely light. Daniel stood beside her, not too close, not far. Their reflections overlapped in the glass, two outlines blurred by water and light. For the first time, silence didn't feel like avoidance. It felt like peace. He broke it, almost gently. Do you ever think some buildings are alive? She smiled, eyes still on the window. If they are, this one's been watching us. He chuckled. Then I hope it approves. Their laughter faded into the hum of the lights. Outside, the storm began to move east, leaving behind the soft rhythm of dripping water a metronome for something new, quiet, and real. They stayed a little longer, not because there was more to fix, but because neither wanted to leave what was finally whole. 6 months later, the tower gleamed like a promise reborn. Rain polished every window, and the lobby filled with quiet applause and camera flashes. The rededication ceremony had gone exactly as planned, every speech on time, every detail in place. Claire Monroe moved through it all with her usual calm, clipboard in hand, the quiet architect of a perfect evening. She had overseen the final phase of Blueprint Voices, seen the team grow, watched old maintenance staff stand on stage for the first time as partners, not employees. The sight filled her chest with something steady and proud. For once, she wasn't holding things together out of fear of them falling apart, she was letting them stand on their own. The crowd began to thin. The music softened to strings. Claire exhaled, finally allowing herself to feel tired. She turned toward the glass doors that led to the street, the sound of rain calling softly beyond. Leaving already? The voice came from behind her, warm and familiar. She turned. Daniel stood there, no suit jacket now, just a crisp white shirt, sleeves slightly rolled. The same calm eyes, the same smile that always arrived half a second before she expected it. "I think the tower can survive one night without me," she said. He stepped closer. "It could, but I'm not sure I can." She blinked, startled into stillness. He took her hand, gently but sure. The background noise faded until it was only rain and the soft rhythm of her heartbeat. "You once told me every structure needs care to stay standing," he said quietly. "You were right. I thought I fixed a building." He paused, eyes steady on hers. "But what I really needed was someone to fix my life." The words slipped into her like warmth after a long winter. She opened her mouth, but no answer came. He smiled, that quiet, certain smile she had learned to read over months of shared work and late nights. "You did, Claire, brick by brick." Before she could look away, he leaned forward and kissed her soft. Sure, the kind of kiss that felt like coming home rather than getting lost. When they pulled apart, neither spoke for a moment. The tower's reflection shimmered around them, the world made of glass and light and rain. He glanced toward the wide glass doors. "Walk with me?" She nodded. Their fingers stayed linked as they stepped beneath the overhang, into the gentle golden drizzle. The city lights turned the rain into falling sparks. Above them, Vance Tower rose in perfect symmetry, its windows glowing like the heart of something alive. They stood there a long time, two silhouettes under the gleaming canopy, the rain soft as memory. He looked at her again, voice low. "You mistook a millionaire for a maintenance worker." She smiled. "Best mistake I ever made." He laughed softly, squeezing her hand. "Then let's never fix it." They walked out into the rain, slow, unhurried, the light wrapping around them like warmth. The tower behind them reflected every step, like a story that had found its ending and its beginning in the same breath. She mistook a millionaire for a maintenance worker. But what she truly found was the man who built her faith back, brick by brick. Sometimes, love doesn't build new towers. It just teaches the old ones how to breathe again. Thank you for watching. Valen's stories where power learns to love again.